You're watching Aviation on Demand on Comcast. I'm Andrew Schmertz at Lancaster Airport. The vast majority of general aviation pilots are fixed-wing pilots. Learning to fly a helicopter is challenging for many reasons, not just flying the machine. There are far fewer helicopter schools and far fewer places to rent you one. But once you're behind the controls, you may want to leave your wings on the ground.
Pilots like to say that helicopters fly by beating the air into submission. A spinning rotor on the tail and one on the top somehow turn a strange-looking aircraft into the most versatile flying machine ever invented. Zachary Wiest is learning to fly one.
When I'm flying, I kind of feel like a human gyroscope, because you always have to know which way is up. You have to be able to feel the helicopter. The smallest movements you have to be able to correct for as they're happening. You almost have to anticipate the helicopter's movements. And it's kind of a mind game with the wind and the balance of the helicopters.
A helicopter may fly, but that's where the similarities with airplanes end.
So what we do is hold the cyclic in about a neutral position, pedals in a fairly neutral position, increase the power.
And the cycle, what is this doing again?
This is the throttle, this is the collective that causes them to go up and down.
So the blades go, okay.
They change the pitch of the blades, yeah. So we gradually pull the collective, and as we're doing it, the blades are changing pitch, becoming coarser, until we actually lift off the ground. And there we are, we lift it off. And we hold it in the hover by use of the collective to make sure that we hover around about 3 to 5 feet off the ground. The cyclic keeps us in the same place over the ground, and the pedals are used for turning.
Helicopters can fly low and slow. They need just a few feet to take off and land. And while planes first land and then stop, a helicopter stops and then lands. If you learn to fly the thing, they'll take you in any direction you want to go. At Dutch Country Helicopters, Terry Inch teaches future pilots on the Bell 47.
So if I tilt it sideways, we'll go sideways. If I tilt the disc forwards, we'll go forwards.
Terry came from the United Kingdom. He bought this flight school, brought over some instructors, and the students have followed him across the pond.
We advertise in the UK, and we do get pilots come over here to train with us because it's cheaper, the weather's better.
Simon Rogers left his family in Kent, England, and his job in telecommunications to spend 3 months in the Pennsylvania countryside. He hopes to return to the UK to fly helicopters for a living.
I've always wanted to come to the US. I've dreamed. This is my first time in the States. It's also cheaper, but also the weather's better. We tend to have a lot of wet weather. Staying in the air, that's the most challenging part of flying the helicopter.
Yes, it is. Now, I have a pilot's license to fly fixed-wing planes, but I might as well have had nothing more than a moped license once I got into the Bell 47. Terry first talks me through it.
The collective, this one under my hand, controls how high we are above the ground. Now, if I pull it up, we'll go up. If I lower it, we'll go down, because it changes the angle of the blade. The cyclic, the big stick in the middle, controls where we are. Now, the object is to maintain your position above the ground by making very small movements. Now, I'm going to control the other things, and you can feel under your hand it's hydraulically operated, so it's very light. All you want to do is maintain the position that we're in, simply by moving the cyclic around, okay? Okay. So
then, for better or worse, Terry let me try my hand at it. And it took no time for the helicopter to show who's the boss. And it wasn't me.
I'm going to start you off again. Okay. Right, there we are. You've got it. Hold us in the state of Pennsylvania. Okay. 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 I've got it. Not easy, huh?
No, not at all.
I think all of it is very challenging. I think the hardest part really is the hovering, as you actually saw yourself. I think it gets difficult because you've got to do 4 controls all at the same time.
Okay, I've got it. Okay. Yeah, so this is what it's like at first. You know,
This is the first.
you're teaching the students. This is what they all do. You're not alone. Everybody does it the
Good to
same.
hear that.
And at the moment, we get to the stage where everybody's just thinking about what they're doing rather than instinctively feeling the helicopter. It takes time, but it's very rewarding once you can do it.
Darren Lucas came with Terry to teach here, and he says those first few lessons with a new student can be a bit dicey.
You must keep your hand on the cyclic at all times. You can never let it go. I had one student just take his hand off the cyclic and point at a local airport, which wasn't very good, so I had to get control very quickly, and you just explain to them that's not a good thing to do. The controls that we have in a helicopter, we have three controls. Firstly, we have a cyclic control. This governs the forward, the back, the right and the left direction control for the aircraft. The other control we have is the collective. What this does is changes the pitch of the blades and lifts us up, and it changes the pitch collectively, hence why it's called a collective, which governs the up and the down. On the end of the collective we have a throttle. The throttle governs, just like the car, how much power we want from the engine. We also have anti-torque pedals. They control the tail rotor at the back for direction control, mainly when we're on the ground. So you're basically controlling 3 items at any one time, and also you're controlling the throttle. So that's 4 items you have to control at the same time. Hence why flying helicopters is slightly more challenging than an aircraft.
Many students say they became fascinated with helicopters from watching the show MASH, so Terry went out and got himself one that looks the part.
Yeah, this is our latest helicopter, Bell 47G model. We wanted it to authentically represent the Korean era helicopters. In fact, it is a Korean veteran anyway, but we had it rebuilt, repainted with authentic decals on it to represent the use that these had in Korea.
Helicopter pilots occupy a unique place in aviation. Of the 700,000 pilots licensed in the U.S., just 30,000 fly helicopters. What that means is that helicopter pilots are in demand for high-paying jobs. While the airline industry struggles, the chopper business is spinning on nicely. Pilots can fly for TV and radio stations, sightseeing operators, law enforcement agencies, and oil companies that bring crews out to the rigs in the Gulf of Mexico.
There's been a big change certainly in the last couple of years. Helicopter pilots are in great demand in the USA. I think there's no doubt that the Vietnam era pilots are starting to retire, starting to leave aviation, so the doors are opening very much for helicopter pilots, and the experience of most flight schools like us is that business is booming at the moment.
If you fly every day, you can learn to fly a helicopter in 6 weeks for about $10,000.
You see what I mean about airplane pilots?
Oh, yeah, there's
absolutely
totally
no difference.
And while I couldn't figure out which way was up, it does eventually click, and you'll be able to fly without having to go anywhere. In Lancaster, Pennsylvania, I'm Andrew
You're
Schmertz.
kind of doing a little bit of a circular kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, right?
Yeah.